Saltpeter, also known as potassium nitrate, is one of the primary ingredients of gunpowder, a revolutionary substance that has changed fields such as warfare for better or for worse. Saltpeter was a readily available substance due to its abundance throughout the Asian continent and the ability for nations to trade for this product. However, during wartime, these trade routes could be easily disrupted, which forced many nations outside of the Asian continent to acquire their saltpeter through other means. In this video, we will be discussing the intriguing logistics behind the acquisition of saltpeter during wartime prior to the 1900s. Before we delve into the ways various groups acquire saltpeter, we need to first understand how saltpeter is formed. The process is quite technical, but I will provide a condensed explanation on how this works. First, ammonia-containing substances such as urine react with oxygen with the help of bacteria to produce nitrates. These nitrates then bond with potassium ions to create potassium nitrate, aka saltpeter. These potassium ions are typically found in places such as soil. Now that we have a general idea as to how saltpeter is formed, this gives us a hint as to how nations would be able to go about acquiring this substance, even when traditional sources were not available. Most groups that could not simply mine or trade for saltpeter typically produce saltpeter by mixing urine with a substance such as ash from burnt wood. They then processed the resulting mixture after a period of time and extracted the saltpeter from the vile concoction. In 1862, Joseph LeConte, a professor at UC Berkeley, wrote instructions for the manufacture of saltpeter, which contain extensive explanations on how to obtain saltpeter through human waste. Two notable methods included the French method and the Swiss method. The French method involved creating large beds of manure, wood ash, and straw. They would then keep these beds saturated with urine and constantly mix this wonderful stew to encourage the development of the precursor to saltpeter. After a year of doing this, they would leach the beds with water and collect the leftover calcium nitrate. In order to turn this calcium nitrate into saltpeter, they filtered the calcium nitrate through potash, which is essentially a collection of salts that are full of potassium, which encourages the formation of saltpeter. The Swiss method wasn't too different from the French method. The Swiss method, however, only used urine. This urine was collected in sand pits that would then be leached with water in order to collect the resulting nitrates that would then be turned into saltpeter with the usage of potash, similar to the French method. However, keep in mind that the Swiss method has very little information regarding it outside of LeConte's writing, unlike the French method, which is referenced in Lavoisier and the powder management, so keep that in mind regarding the Swiss method. Due to saltpeter being a prized commodity, groups who could assist in the acquisition of saltpeter were essential. It was also necessary for nations to have various regulations that dealt with saltpeter. An example of a group that assisted in the acquisition of saltpeter would be saltpeter men in England, specifically within London in the 17th century. Initially, their job was to collect things that could be used to create saltpeter, such as the urine left on the streets by households. However, King Charles I sought to provide saltpeter men with near-tyrannical power to dig for saltpeter wherever they wanted it in the pursuit of the precious substance. With these powers, a saltpeter man could walk into your home and excavate your living room in the pursuit of saltpeter if they believed there to be saltpeter in that location. What makes this worse is that these men often took your transportation methods, such as horse-drawn wagons, to transport the saltpeter. They also had no obligation to fix your home after their excavation, so you would be stuck with the cost of repairing your damaged home and refilling the excavated area with more soil. Many citizens displayed their grievances regarding this unjust process, but these cries fell on deaf ears. King Charles I did not care for these grievances and continued with this practice, which, along with a variety of other factors, brought about the English Civil War, a war ranging from August 22nd, 1642 to September 3rd, 1651. As there is another video that explains the matter of saltpetermen very well, I will not talk more on this topic, besides my brief explanation. However, I suggest you check out The Curse of the Saltpetermen, History of Gunpowder by a channel called Foreign Field. I provided a link in the description of this video if you would like to learn more about saltpetermen in England during this time period. Other nations, such as Sweden, went about saltpeter acquisition differently. The Swedish state realized they needed ways to produce their own saltpeter rather than constantly importing the product. The king during this time period, Gustav Vasa, an interesting looking man, who was king of Sweden from 1523 to 1560, declared that the lands rich in nitrates are to be considered as royal property. These farmers were believed to have faced legal trouble if they did not fulfill their quota. These farmers were ordered to construct the floor of their barns out of wood in order to make the urine from the animals leak into the soil and create a nitrate-rich environment. Many farmers complained about being forced to construct their floors of their barns out of wood, and they also had an issue with the frequent trips to the simmering plant. Eventually, in 1634, the practice of having farmers fill quotas was replaced with a standard nitrate tax. To enforce this tax, the Swedish state utilized Saltpeter, which roughly translates to saltpeter Jews. These were individuals who collected the urine-soaked soil in places such as the soil underneath barns in order to utilize the nitrates and create saltpeter. Having individual farmers submit their items to the state was proving to be inefficient. There was also an increased need for saltpeter during the Great Power era of Swedish history, so saltpeter Jews were employed to streamline this process. They would travel from village to village in search of farmers in order to collect their soil. Similar to the saltpeter men of England, saltpeter Jews were given free rein to dig up any soil that they could find that contained nitrates, and they were even allowed to break the wooden floors if they wanted to do so. The farmers were also expected to house and feed these workers until the soil collection was complete. Once the saltpeter Jews left, the farmers were expected to fill in the excavated area and possibly replace the broken floors out of their own supplies. A common term used to describe saltpeter Jews was pishmen. Well, that's a blatant insult directed towards what their job entailed, which is, essentially collecting piss. Due to the numerous complaints and issues with saltpeter Jews, in 1723, the Swedish state gave a royal decree that gave farmers the right to produce products derived from nitrates and sell them to the Swedish state's partner in gunpowder manufacturing. Due to the destruction and inconvenience caused by saltpeter Jews, the farmers were quite enthusiastic about this new option, and many jumped at this opportunity. Eventually, in 1800, the Swedish state decided that the nitrate-rich soil underneath the farmers' barns would not be considered royal property anymore. This concept would be phased out at the end of 1804. However, farmer households were still required to deliver around 4,200 kilograms of nitrate-rich soil to the Swedish state every year, even though it was not considered royal property anymore. In the mid-19th century, large salt layers were discovered in Saxony, which could be used in the production of gunpowder. This discovery resulted in a decrease in demand for saltpeter, thus reducing the need for the nitrate quota that the farmers had to fulfill. Soon enough, a substance known as cotton powder was discovered. This substance acted similarly to saltpeter, which allowed for it to be used as a substitute. The discovery of cotton powder resulted in simmering plants becoming obsolete and eventually being fully phased out. The combination of all these events led to the nitrate quotas in the nitrate tax entirely dissolving in 1830. Prior to the 1900s, methods of obtaining the components needed to produce saltpeter and the substance itself were quite the dirty and even tyrannical affair in some cases. While this video may not have been all-encompassing and focused more on saltpeter acquisition within a few separate nations, I hope that it has allowed you all to at least become more aware on this matter and gain an interesting bit of knowledge that you may not have come across otherwise. With that, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for future content. Let me know of any topics that you would like for me to discuss, and I will happily take these suggestions into consideration. Also, if you have any suggestions on how I can improve my videos, I would greatly appreciate them. This is InfoInflow, and for now, sayonara.